Good day, everyone. Welcome to the virtual symposium. Today, our speakers will tackle about the origin, what are the causes, and preventions as well in this coronavirus or the COVID-19. So as an overview, COVID-19 is an infectious disease caused by a new coronavirus introduced to humans for the first time. It is a spread from person to person, mainly through the droplets produced when an infected person speaks, coughs, or sneezes. These droplets can land in the mouths or noses of people who are nearby. These droplets are too heavy to travel far in the air. They only travel approximately 1 meter and quickly settle on the surfaces. This is the reason person-to-person spread is happening mainly between close contacts. The exact time that the virus can survive on the surfaces is not yet known. So, it is wise to clean surfaces regularly, particularly in the vicinity of people infected with the COVID-19. Hands touch many surfaces, which can be contaminated with the virus. You should therefore avoid touching your eyes, nose, or mouths since contaminated hands can transfer the virus from the surfaces to yourself. When coughing or sneezing, cover your mouth and nose with a hand or elbow or use a disposable tissue. If a tissue is already, discard it immediately into a closed bin. The most effective way to prevent the spread of the new coronavirus is to clean your hands frequently with an alcohol-based hand rub or soap and water. This will eliminate the virus if it is on your hands. Stay healthy and prevent the spread of coronavirus or the COVID-19. For the meantime, let our speaker carry out the motion to elaborate the information about the COVID-19.
Researchers first identified a coronavirus in 1937. They isolated one that was responsible for a type of bronchitis in birds and had the potential to devastate poultry stocks. Scientists found evidence of human coronaviruses in 1960s in the noses of people with the common cold. Several human coronaviruses cause mild illnesses, including colds. The name coronavirus refers to the crown-like projection on the pathogen's surface. Corona in Latin means halo or crown. In humans, coronavirus infection most often occur in the winter and early spring, but they can happen at any time. Late in 2019, scientists started monitoring the outbreak of the new coronavirus SARS-CoV-2, which causes COVID-19. They first identified the virus in Wuhan, China. The virus spread rapidly around the world and the World Health Organization declared a pandemic in March 2020. The new coronavirus has been responsible for millions of infections globally, and it has caused more than 2 million deaths. The mortality rate varies from country to country. In the United States, it is around 1.7%. Many researchers believe SARS-CoV-2 first infected bats before spreading to other animals, including humans. Some of the first people with COVID-19 had links to live animal and seafood markets. Overall, information about the origin of the virus, scientists are still investigating its source and initial patterns of spreading.
Many people with COVID-19 experience a relatively mild form of the disease that does not require specialist treatment. Others develop severe breathing problems and need to spend time in the hospital. In some cases, it is fatal. Some people who do not have severe symptoms initially go on to develop health issues that continue for weeks or months, according to the Center of Disease Control and Prevention, CDC. People with high risk of severe COVID-19 symptoms include older adults and those with underlying medical conditions, including high blood pressure, heart and lungs problem, diabetes, and cancer. According to the CDC, most children with COVID-19 have mild or no symptoms, fewer children have developed COVID-19 than adults. That said, infants and children with certain medical conditions may have an increased risk of severe illness and death. There may also be a high risk of severe COVID-19 during pregnancy, as well as an increased risk of issues such as preterm birth. However, the role of the risk in these circumstances remains unclear. Which treatment can help with COVID-19? Symptoms of COVID-19. Some may start experience COVID-19. People may start experience COVID-19 symptoms 2 to 14 days after exposure to SARS-CoV-2. Symptoms of COVID-19 include fever, chill, cough, shortness of breath or difficulty breathing, a sore throat, congestions or a runny nose, fatigue, headache, muscle pain, a new loss of taste or smell, nausea, vomiting or both, and diarrhea.
As the virus increases, severe complications can arise. COVID-19 can affect a wide range body systems, lead to organ failure. Systematic inequality in healthcare have increased the risk of illness and death for people in marginalized racial and ethnic groups. Fit the mask snugly against the slope of your ears. Cover your ears or tying the strings behind your head. If you have continually, adjust your mask properly. And you might need to find a different mask type. Make sure you can breathe properly.
Effective on February 2, 2021, masks are required on planes, buses, trains, and other forms of public transportation traveling into, within, or out of the United States and the U.S. transportation hubs, such as airports and stations. Stay 6 feet away from others. Inside your home, avoid close contact with people who are sick. If possible, maintain 6 feet between the person who is sick and other household members. Outside your home, put 6 feet of distance between yourself and people who don't live in your household. Remember that some people without symptoms may be able to spread virus. Stay at least 6 feet, about 2 arm lengths, from other people. Keeping distance from the others is especially important for people who are at higher risk of getting very sick. Get vaccinated. Authorized COVID-19 vaccines can help protect you from COVID-19. You should get a COVID-19 vaccine when it's available to you. Once you are fully vaccinated, you may be able to start doing some things that you had stopped doing because of the pandemic. Avoid crowds and poorly ventilated spaces. Being in crowds like in restaurants, bars, fitness centers, or movie theaters puts you at higher risk of COVID-19. Avoid indoor spaces that do not offer fresh air from the outdoors as much as possible. If indoors, bring in fresh air by opening windows and doors if possible.
Wash your hands often with soap and water for at least 20 seconds, especially after you have been in a public place. Or after blowing your nose, coughing, or sneezing. It is especially important to wash before eating or preparing food, before touching your face, after using the restroom, after leaving a public place, after blowing your nose, coughing, or sneezing, after handling your mask, after changing a diaper, after caring for someone sick, after touching animals or pets. If soap and water are not readily available, use hand sanitizer that contains at least 60% alcohol. Cover all surfaces of your hands and rub them together until they feel dry. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth with unwashed hands. Cover coughs and sneezes. If you are wearing mask, you can cough or sneeze into your mask. Put on a new, clean mask as soon as possible and wash your hands. If you are not wearing your mask, always cover your mouth and nose with a tissue when you cough or sneeze, or use the inside of your elbow and do not spit. Throw used tissue in the trash.
Hi, this is Revelyn Halidnan from DevCom 3A. So as you can see, we are having a symposium through this COVID-19 pandemic. So we all know that this COVID-19 pandemic are spreading anywhere in our country. And we all know that anytime and anywhere this COVID-19 can affected us, right? So especially our families. But in somewhere, we can find a way or a solution to avoid this kind of situations, which is the COVID-19. So we need to follow the government's protocols. So, and also we need to listen in their advice. So, and also we need to cooperate with them. So, like they told us to wear masks or to wear face shield and disinfect our hands every day. So we need to clean ourselves and disinfect ourselves, not just ourselves but also our homes, so that we can save our family, we can save ourselves, and also we can save our country. So we need to disinfect our doorknobs, we need to disinfect and clean our keys, keyboards, and also our phone. So we need to disinfect it because we always using our phone anywhere, right? And also, you need to educate yourself and make a habit the cleaning and disinfecting your homes and yourself, so that you can avoid the COVID-19 and you will not belong to the people who have a COVID-19, and you will not feel the pain of COVID-19. And if our disinfection is dirty, we need to clean it using a soap or any detergent that make our disinfection clean.
We may never, in retrospect, know the answer with certainty about SARS-CoV-2, but we should put in place the scientific instrumentality and collaboration that will enable us to learn any future origin of an emerging infection. It's hard to estimate how easy or difficult it may be to really nail down every aspect of SARS-CoV-2. There could be additional investigation in animal species to show, for example, where the virus can thrive in bat species or others. There may be some further inquiries about the intermediate hosts and what may be carriers or intermediaries between humans and the species of actual origin. But at the moment, that's still speculative. And it is not certain, in my mind, that we will get to the bottom with a high degree of confidence. We can learn from it. And most importantly to me is learning for the ability to predict, anticipate, and interdict a future outbreak. Well, the major challenges for SARS-CoV-2 include the fact that it's so long after the origin of the virus before an investigation begins. You'll have to go back genetically to look at the specific sequence of the earliest detected viruses. You'll have a very challenging time of isolating in a precise way the locus of emergence. You may know it's in a region or even a city, but then beyond that, exactly what the transmission will be, that's going to be very challenging to sort out with a great deal of specificity and confidence. One thing we can be pretty certain is that there will be many retrospective assessments, official, unofficial, sanctioned, unsanctioned, global, national. All aspects of the SARS-CoV-2 experience are going to be subject to intensive reflection and lessons gained. Those that are undertaken already, sponsored by the World Health Organization, have, as is typical, very broad representation of countries around the world, a wide spectrum of expertise being brought to bear on the questions, and they may yield very important lessons about the institutional approach, as well as about the problem more generally about emerging infection. There's no doubt in my mind that if we approach questions such as the origin of the virus from a scientific point of view, from a point of view of learning for the future, rather than casting blame for the past, we're much more likely to gain the collaboration, cooperation, and joint work that will be necessary to get to the bottom of the virus. So if we overly politicize the issue from the outset, if our purpose is to cast blame rather than to learn and to prepare better for the future, we handicap our own ability to do better the next time. One can hope that we will learn a number of critical lessons. Lesson number one is that preparation is much more than having a plan. A plan is necessary, but you actually have to have the needed equipment in place. You need to have the resources available, and you need to maintain a public health enterprise that is capable of protecting the public in the case of an outbreak or a pandemic. Number two, we have learned that we need to understand much more about the origin and nature of emerging infection. And we can undertake these studies. We can learn about the environments in which animals, humans, interact in ways that promote the emergence of infection. And finally, we can learn that it's a globally interdependent world when it comes to detecting and managing emerging infections. We have to work cooperatively around the world to rapidly detect and respond appropriately to these global threats.
You've probably been hearing a lot about coronavirus disease 2019, or COVID-19. For most that catch it, the symptoms will be relatively mild. Those who are most vulnerable are the elderly and those with compromised immune systems or other health conditions. To help protect them and avoid spreading the virus, avoid handshakes. And wash your hands for 20 seconds with soap and water. When you cough, cover your mouth by coughing into your elbow. Also avoid crowds and unnecessary travel and practice social distancing. If you have flu-like symptoms or have been exposed to COVID-19, stay home, avoid others, and call your doctors before showing up at their office or the emergency.
In March of 1963, Dr. Maurice Hilleman was woken up one night by his 5-year-old daughter. She was complaining of a sore throat, so Hilleman looked her over and determined she had the mumps. Unable to sleep, he was struck with an idea. He swabbed her throat for a sample, drove to the lab, and got to work. 4 years later, his mumps vaccine was approved. It was the fastest a vaccine had ever been developed. Until now.
New vaccine against coronavirus.
And it's incredible how quickly this vaccine and others have been developed.
This was done in record time.
This is extraordinary. This is the
fastest vaccine development in U.S. history.
In 2020, vaccines for COVID-19 have shattered previous records, going from development to approval in a matter of months. That speed was driven by billions of dollars and a global effort. But in some cases, it was also because of a breakthrough in vaccine technology decades in the making. Something that could shrink this timeline going forward and change how we make vaccines altogether. Vaccines teach your immune system how to respond to a threat. and traditionally there have been 4 ways to do this. The 2 most common types of vaccines work by exposing you to a weakened or dead version of a virus or bacteria. The weakened virus won't make you sick, but it will teach your body how to fight the real thing if you're exposed to it later on. This is how the measles and annual flu vaccines work. Another, less common type of vaccine does a similar thing, but uses an inert version of a toxin instead of a virus. The most well-known version of this is probably the tetanus shot. This 4th type of vaccine works a little differently, because it only uses a small part of the virus instead of the whole thing. Common examples of this would be the hepatitis B vaccine or the HPV vaccine. Some of the new COVID-19 vaccines also rely on these traditional methods. For example, one COVID-19 vaccine currently in trials uses this 4th method. It only uses one part of the SARS-CoV-2 virus, known as the spike protein. That spike protein is what allows the coronavirus to enter your cells. When injected into your body on its own, it's harmless. But your body will still recognize it as a foreign threat and launch an immune response to fight it off, which is enough to teach your body how to fight the whole virus. But isolating and preparing that spike protein for a vaccine is a process. Researchers first had to modify it, then multiply it a lot, and then assemble the vaccine itself in a lab. In fact, one thing that all 4 of these types of vaccines have in common is that they all require growing and transporting large amounts of live pathogens in a lab. And that takes a lot of time. A vaccine goes through many steps before it can be approved. But before anything else, it has to be developed. And working with live pathogens makes that process a lot longer. On average, it takes 5 to 10 years for a vaccine to reach FDA approval in the United States. Most COVID-19 vaccines have gotten through this process a lot faster by overlapping the different phases of human trials and starting the manufacturing early. But some vaccines have also found a groundbreaking way to speed up this first section by shifting some of the work out of the lab and into your body. Nearly every function in the human body is carried out by proteins, so our cells are constantly manufacturing them. To do that, they make a single-stranded copy of DNA. That copy is called messenger RNA, or mRNA. Each strand of mRNA holds the information on how to make one type of protein. The cell reads the mRNA, follows the instructions, and makes a protein. And that's where these 2 new types of vaccines come in. They contain instructions. Researchers who developed these new types of vaccines, called mRNA vaccines, started with the genetic sequence of the virus. They also decided to focus on the spike protein we talked about earlier. But instead of assembling and purifying that protein in a lab, they identified the part of the genetic sequence that creates it. And then took a much faster route by synthesizing mRNA and using that as the vaccine, which saved months of time and money. Once inside the body, the cell reads the mRNA and begins to make harmless spike proteins of its own. From there, your body's immune system recognizes the foreign threat and sounds the alarm. This is how the new COVID-19 vaccines from Pfizer and BioNTech and Moderna work. But the main drawback with an mRNA vaccine is that mRNA breaks down very easily. It has to be delivered inside a protective fatty barrier and kept ultra cold, which isn't super ideal for a vaccine that needs to reach all areas of the globe. Another effective new-to-consumer kind of vaccine works similarly, but uses DNA instead of mRNA, which is much more stable. The COVID-19 vaccines from AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson are this type. It doesn't require the ultra-cold conditions, but it does have its own drawbacks. To get the DNA into your cells, researchers use a harmless virus as a carrier. But over time, your body will build resistance to that virus, which means future doses using this carrier will become less and less effective, and the carrier will need to be updated.